to Uncomfortable Podcast. My special guest, the Keeper Catran-Whitney. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing excellent, Lamore. How are you doing, man?
I can't complain. Life is beautiful.
Yes, yes. We
Wanna,
are above ground, so that means we have opportunities, right?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. He woke up this morning.
right.
Can you tell the guests a little about yourself?
Yeah, as Lamore said, but first of all, thanks for having me on the Uncomfortable Truth podcast. It is an honor to be here, truly. I'm just happy to be able to participate. My name is Keeper Catran-Whitney. I'm the author of the book Helplessness: The Emotional Health Challenges Brothers Experience Once We Learn Our Sisters Have Been Sexually Abused by Our Parents. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and I talk about this all the time because when it comes to sexual abuse, and in particular child sexual abuse, there is a group who's never invited into the conversation. There's a group who's always left out, and that's the brothers. It's as if the emotional impact on us is not important. It's not even considered. So oftentimes I'll ask people, have you ever heard of a situation where brothers have been invited to the conversation? And to a person, it's always no. So as I said, this is what I talk about. This is what my book is about because I believe brothers need to be invited into the conversation in order to heal and to help their families heal. I can give you, if you like, the genesis of how all of this started, and then we can go from there. So if it's that what you'd like me to do, and
Do
tell the
the
story.
do the people that you interview have latent memories? Like they don't remember it until they go into like hypnosis or anything like that?
Well, yes, everyone has memories because when you have experienced child sexual abuse, either as collateral damage, for instance, if you're a brother and you learned about your sisters, you are considered collateral damage and not oftentimes direct victims. And yet, as a brother, you can easily imagine very vividly what has happened to your sisters. And once you learn about it, there is this sense of shock and disbelief and guilt and self blame. So many things start to rush in on you. There's anger, there's betrayal, there's shame and the stigma of if someone knows, and fear and anxiety. So even though you may not be the direct victim as a brother, you still suffer all of these traumas. You still suffer this PTSD. And so people whose shows that I'm on and in situations where I'm talking at events or something, yes, to your question, they are latent because what we typically tend to do is we typically tend to suppress them. And for me and my brothers, when we learned about what happened, there was so much, we were paralyzed. We didn't know what to do. So I can tell you how all of it came about, how it took me years, decades to find my self-esteem, find my self-worth, to reconnect with my sisters, and how all of that has played out. If you'd like me to share that story.
Yes, I'd love to hear that story.
Okay. In 1971, my family, we were very poor. We were living in South Central LA. We were living in the home of the home of the Crips and the Bloods. They were on the rise. They were everywhere. And with my childhood, I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. I lived in 21 different places before I moved out. We were constantly being evicted because we could not afford to pay rent. I was homeless 3 times. And so in 1971, my mother decided, I want to start singing because she had an amazing singing voice. And she started singing with her brother and her sister, and they were amazing. But the more as good as they were, they could not make enough money to pay a $90 a month rent. So this is the time when the Jackson Five were singing, and Michael Jackson, and they're all over the place. You've got ABC, Who's Loving You, I Want You Back. I mean, it is everywhere, and every kid in the world wants to emulate them. they can imagine themselves being the Jackson Five. And so my mother, looking at her children singing and dancing, decided to ask us, would you guys like to sing with me? Because as a family, we could make more money. And so I have three brothers and four sisters, a family of four boys, four girls, my mother and my stepfather. So there's 10 of us. And of course, we all said, yes, we want to sing. So the next thing you know, the Whitney family was born. We are singing in after hour nightclubs all over Los Angeles. I mean, we are performing everywhere. People are coming in droves to see us. So our life was go to school, come home, do homework, rehearse, get a quick nap, go work at a nightclub and repeat over and over and over again. In 1971, one Saturday afternoon, we are rehearsing for a show later that night when the phone rings. My mother goes over to the telephone and says, hello? Say that again? Who? And then she looks at us and says, Michael Jackson's on the phone. Yeah, that Michael Jackson is calling our house, this poor family, and he wants to speak to the brother directly underneath me. Child number four. I'm number two. I have an older brother, then there's me, then I have our first sister, and then there's this brother. So this brother gets on the telephone. Yeah, hello? And he's all excited, right? And then he hangs up and screams, Michael Jackson said he's heard of me, heard I sing and dance just like him, tells us to keep going. We will get there someday. Now, I ask you, what child could not build dreams on that? And so we took it to the next level. Jump cut 6 years later, 1977, we are everywhere. We're doing concerts, we're on TV, we're on magazines, covers, inside. We were everywhere. In fact, that year, we had made the coveted Billboard's top 100 not once, not twice, but three times. I mean, we were it. We were with United Artists Records, and we were doing our thing, and yet we're still struggling. We are still, trying to find our way and get out of a life of poverty. But here we are doing all of this stuff. 1977 also happened to be the year Motown completed their exhaustive 3-year search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five, they had lost 3 years earlier to Epic Records. And the family that they settled on to replace them was my family. In fact, Suzanne DePass, who discovered the Jackson Five in Gary, Indiana, and brought them to Detroit, to Motown, she is walking us through the door to replace them. Dude, we are over the moon. We are on our way. It was amazing. In fact, they had created the TV show for us. I had the pilot script in my office. It's called At Wit's End. We were on our way. Our life of abject poverty is over. We're about to be rich. We're about to become wealthy and famous. Everything we had hoped we could achieve was about to happen. Like, it's exactly what Michael Jackson told us when he said, keep going, you will get there one day. He was correct, but could he have imagined we were going to replace him? No. Where they had one singer who sang lead, all eight of us sang lead. All eight of us danced. All eight of us, me and my brothers, we all played instruments. It was amazing. So we've got this one week when we are about to sign the largest new artist contract Motown offered any new group. We were going to sign on a Thursday or a Friday. We just didn't know what day. But the previous Saturday, we're all around the house. And then we boys hear my older sister scream upstairs, boys, come downstairs, family meeting. This is it. We're about to learn the day. I would say the bus was outside the house. It was revved up. It was warm. The engine was running, the door was open. All we had to do was step outside and we were gone. It was done. It was a wrap. So I come downstairs. Now, I would tell any of your listeners and any of your viewers that what we are about to get into is very sensitive. It
Yes,
My
I
topic
definitely.
is child sexual abuse. And so if you need to pull back, by all means do so. Protect yourself. The Uncomfortable Truths podcast will be there in the future. Come back to this particular episode and take it as you need, because there could be some triggering things that you are about to hear. By all means, protect yourself emotionally. With that said, I come downstairs to the family meeting. I walk into the living room. And as I enter the living room, my oldest sister, child number three, is pacing back and forth in front of the archway leading into the living room. And she is mad. Oh, she is pissed. But I don't know what's going on. And it really wasn't all that odd because she and my mother, they'd be at each other all the time. So it wasn't all that odd. What was odd were my three little sisters sitting on the couch at the far end, and they weren't saying a word. They weren't laughing. They weren't talking. They were huddled in a corner. These three always talked. They always joked. They were always teasing some way, someone. It was all the time. It was just who we were as siblings because we were so tight, singing all the time and rehearsing all the time, and we played together all the time. But there they are at the far end of the couch, and they're silent. Also on the couch are my two youngest brothers. And they are like me. They're quiet, but they're looking around like, what the hell is going on? Don't you guys realize what's about to happen? We are no longer going to be poor. We are about to be famous like this. And so my two younger brothers are like me. They have no idea. Standing behind the couch at the far end, down where my three younger sisters are, is my oldest brother, child number one. And I lock eyes on him. We don't say a word, but we just look. It's just what's happening here. I take a seat on the couch next to my two younger brothers, in between my sisters, my three younger sisters, who the youngest are twins. My mother had all eight of her kids by the time she was 24. She had my brother at 17, and she just kept on going. I told her, "Girl, you were on your back the whole time." And her reply jokingly was, "I never had a headache." No, you did not have a headache. So as I sit down, within seconds, my mother and stepfather enter the room. Now, Helplessness, the book, is a brother's perspective on what happens to us, the trauma we experience, and the lack of support that happens when we go through it. There's a brown recliner in the middle of the living room, and we have this shocking green carpet. So the color clash was just crazy, brown and green. But that's what we had. My stepfather goes and he sits down on the recliner and immediately bends over and does this. What? Why is he doing that? That's all I could think. What's going on? Why is he doing that? I look at my mother and she's usually very bubbly. She's usually effervescent. She's excited. She's like her children. Her children are just like her. This podcast is called Uncomfortable Truths.
Yes, it is.
Well, me and my brothers are about to learn a very uncomfortable truth. See, earlier that day, Lamore, my sisters were going in and out of different bedrooms. Doors were slamming. and you could hear raised voices behind the bedroom doors. And you could, you really couldn't make it out. And to me, it was just the girls doing what they do. They always making jokes or laughing or at each other. So there was something going on though. And they would leave the bedroom, go to another bedroom, or they cram into the bathroom, and they would just keep going. It was like a bunch of agitated bees all the time. Like, good Lord, can they stop? But they knew something we boys didn't know. We were about to find out this uncomfortable truth. My mother is stoic. There is not a smile on her face as she walks to the front of the living room and is standing in front of the window that overlooks the sidewalk in the street outside. She turns around and she scans the room and looks at her 8 children. And then she locks eyes on my oldest sister, who is still pacing back and forth in front of the entryway. And she is looking daggers at her. It was as though she could kill her. My brothers and I are about to hear the words no brother ever expects to hear, the words no brother could ever prepare for. My mother takes a deep breath, gets herself prepared, and then she says the first of 3 emotional earthquakes that me and my brothers are about to be hit with in a 10-minute period. See, in California, we get earthquakes all the time. Trees are uprooted, freeways break, homes are rocked back and forth. But with those, you could take a hammer to nail and you could put them back together. You could take some concrete and rebar and reinforce and rebuild the freeway and get back on and keep going. Not a, but those are physical, material earthquakes. You can come back from those real easy and real quick. But emotional earthquakes, mm-mm. Emotional earthquakes takes time. It takes help. And you never fully come back completely from the emotional challenge. You get to a place where you can manage it and you can go forward. You see, there's a lot of talk about mental health these days. But to me, Lamore, most of it is not mental health, the challenge. The challenge is what I call emotional health, because mental health speaks of logic. It's singular. It's isolation. It means the problem is solely yours and no one else's. It is so singular that people are really quick to write you a prescription. Here, take this for depression. Here, take this for your anxiety. But then go to your corner. I don't want to hear anything else about it. It's all on you, which is so wrong. Emotional health, ah, now that's very, very different. Emotional health speaks of feelings. Emotional health speaks of shared experience. Emotional health speaks to inclusion because it means your problem is also impacting other people. And in order for you to heal, other people need to be involved because they are also hurting. It is difficult. You never fully come back from that. As I said, you get to a place to where you manage it. And that's why I say most of these things, when people are talking about mental health, they're talking about emotional health. You get to a place emotionally when if you cannot get the help you need, then you go to the mental. What am I going to do? I got to do something. I got to do something. And what manifests from that could be a lot of destructive behavior. But you go mental after the emotional. So my mother is about to drop the first of 3 emotional earthquakes on me and my brother. As I said, she scanned the room. took a deep breath, and then she said, ever so calm, no emotion whatsoever. Your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. Wait, did you say? No, 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 no. Say no. What did you say? What did you say? The more I am hit with so much shock and disbelief, I am emotionally falling into a void, and I cannot slow the descent. I cannot arrest the descent. There's nothing to grab hold to. And I'm just dropping. And she's still talking, and I'm hearing apartment. I'm hearing liquor store, and I'm hearing park, but it's just not comprehending. Now I'm around 16 or 17 years old. My older brother did around the same thing because we're 11 months apart. But if an adult cannot handle this, when they hear it, how are kids supposed to handle this? Especially when everything you know about your family is so perfect, even though you are so incredibly poor. You know everything about each other. But I've just heard my stepfather has been molesting my sisters for years. It turned out he started molesting them the year Michael Jackson called our house, 1971. My youngest, the twins, were 5 years old. The sister directly above them is 6, and my oldest sister is around 9 or 10. So this has been going on already for 6 years. Then my mother says, then my mother said, I have known all along. No, no, oh, no, 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 no. What do you mean you have known all along? And I dropped further and further and further down the rabbit hole. How can this be? How can you have betrayed your daughters? It's one thing for him, but now to tell me you have empowered, you have given permission, you have allowed this to happen to your 4 daughters? See, oftentimes people will look at the situation in a family situation like this and think the only people who've really been impacted are the direct victims, the sisters, my stepfather, who actually is the monster and the predator. And now I throw my mother into the monster predator position as well, because she allowed it to happen. But where do brothers go with this information? We are so shocked. We are so stunned. And this is not a situation that happens in just the Black community. This crosses race, religion, politics, wealth, education. It crosses social economic lines. It crosses borders. It crosses waters. It goes through every country on the planet because it is an epidemic. Here in the United States, there are 160 unique reported abuses of children, sexual abuses of children, 160 a day. So that meant yesterday, 160 little kids went to school. They came home, they had dinner, they played, they went to bed, and somewhere around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, someone entered their bed. It will happen again tonight, and it will happen again tomorrow night, and the next morrow, and the next morrow, and it will continue at least 160 times a day in the United States, and that's just the reported. So me and my brothers are now indirect collateral damage victims of child sexual abuse. The reality is we had always been victims. We just didn't know it. That's all. Because if one in the family is abused, the entire family is abused. So we got the first two emotional earthquakes. As difficult as those were, the ones that really got us, the ones that locked us down and trapped us for decades, came from my sister, who's pacing in front of the door or the entryway. She turned around and pointed a finger at her brothers and said, "You can't talk about it." It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. You can't talk about it ever. And like that, relationships between brothers and sisters that were so tight before just lay on the living room floor, broken in pieces, shattered. Now, my sisters knew what was coming because their discussions that morning were about we have to tell the boys before we sign this contract with Motown. They have to know what has been happening to us. We're going to tell them. And my mother's anger was because my sisters told her, you either tell them or we are telling them. And so that's where her anger and her unemotional delivery came from. She was about herself and her feelings. So the question becomes, after all of that, where do the brothers go? Because no one ever asked the brothers, are you okay? Do you need to talk? Is there anything we can do for you? But what we get in the process from our sisters who just told us they wanted absolutely nothing to do with us. In fact, they're the people we need to speak to the most. They're the ones who can help us understand their trauma. And even though we're all still kids, but these are the people we need to talk to. But we're just told, go away. And what we hear is, you don't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Nothing about you matters. Go away. In fact, let me trap you, put you in a box, and put you on a shelf in the closet, put you at the very back, and close the door and never come out. Never bring it up. So for brothers, what we hear in that replaces that is, how come you didn't know? How come you didn't see my tears? How come you didn't hear me weeping? And so the question becomes, what happens to brothers? Because in 1971, Lamore, you could go to bookstores and you could find books written by women about their sexual abuse. They were everywhere. Every now and then you'd get a movie, you'd get a documentary series, you'd have someone on TV talking about their story, you would get a magazine article, but it never delved deep into what happened. For brothers, there was nothing. Today, the same thing applies. You could find a documentary, you could find a movie, you could find a magazine article, you could find someone on the next talk show. It's everywhere now. In fact, you even have men talking about their own direct experience from their child sexual abuse. But when it comes to brothers, the uncomfortable truth is, talking about your podcast title, the uncomfortable truth is society doesn't want to know. Society has made us taboo. We are an inconvenient truth, even though we are the last word in the conversation. What about the brothers? Where do they get help from? Who supports them? Who asks them, do you need something? What can I give you? How can I help you? We are an inconvenient truth. We are an uncomfortable truth. No one wants to deal with it because from a societal construct, men, we're super strong. We are so tough. We can deal with anything. We hunt, we gather. That's what we do. We are testosterone driven. Women, estrogen driven, more feelings, more emotions than guys. And they are much more better at handling this conversation amongst themselves. But me and my brothers, we didn't even talk to each other about it. We were so afraid to bring it up. So what I do, with Helplessness being the very first book of its kind that looks at this from a brother's perspective in the hopes of educating people and creating the conversation and elevating the conversation for brothers so we could be a part of the conversation. This is what I talk about. Because there's a paradox that takes place. We are not invited to the conversation, brothers, but we are expected to answer for our lack of participation. You cannot have both. You can't say, how come you didn't hear me? How come you didn't see me when we didn't know? But when we want to talk to you, you say, don't bring it. But then you hold it against us. And for me and my brothers, what made us guilty was just through gender proximity with my stepfather. Basically, what was between his legs is what's between our legs. So that instantly made us guilty in the eyes of my sisters, even though they knew we weren't. And oftentimes, when I go and I speak about this topic, the more what I get without question, no matter how small or how large the audience, there's going to be one woman who stands up and says, your sister was right. It didn't happen to you. It happened more with them than it happened with you. Yeah, we know you're a brother and you got the emotional pain and trauma of it all, but it really happened to them, and you really can't compare apples to oranges with trauma. It is so unfair. Guys are going to process this differently. Brothers are going to process it differently. But I always get, you can't talk about it. It only happens to them. And in that instance, that's when I say 6 years before my sisters in 1966, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitter almost daily for 6 months. So pardon me, I do get it. I do understand. In fact, I understand both sides. I understand the direct victim and I understand the collateral damage victim. And then there's a backing up like, oh, I didn't know you were a victim of sexual abuse. You're only talking about your sisters. And I said, well, yeah, because I'm giving you the perspective from a brother, but that should not make any difference. The trauma is the trauma. If you are going to compare your pain versus a brother's pain, you really can't do that. It's unfair to everyone. It's unfair to my sisters. It's unfair to me and my brothers. It's unfair to the thousands of men walking around in the United States who are dealing with this, who are carrying this hidden burden. We are in pain. We just don't know what to do with it because no one will allow us to talk about it. Because again, we are America's uncomfortable truth in the conversation about child sexual abuse. So that's the framework, and that's what I do. And the more my thing is elevating the voices of brothers. When everyone else is talking about child sexual abuse, and they take that momentary pause to inhale before their next sentence, that's where I step in. That's when brothers step in and we own our space and say, look, we need help. I have been suffering with this for 45 years, and ultimately, my story ends really well because I do get to my sisters, and it is a journey to hell to get there, but I get there. And so I know you have a lot of questions, things you want to ask, but I wanted to give you the context so you'll know who I am and what I'm about and what your audience can now expect the remainder of our conversation to be about.
Yes, no, I do got a lot of questions. You missed most of them during what you were saying, but basically, I want to ask first is, so your parents, your mother or your stepfather never went to prison for this?
No.
They continue to live in the house.
What happened? What happened after that 10 minutes that just broke everything? Immediately, what happened? My stepfather faked a heart attack. Oh, my heart. And then my mother says, oh, there's something wrong with him. I've got to get him to the hospital. Okay, you kids stay here. I got to get him to the hospital. And then they immediately leave the room without us kids being able to ask a single question. The reason why they came downstairs last, in my opinion, is that they were planning their escape. So we could not ask. And so as me and my brothers started to put together what was happening, and then our anger started to develop. I've got to get him out of the house before they do something. And so they go upstairs. The next thing you know, then they're coming back downstairs and they're out the front door. And then for about 5 or 10 minutes, we just sit in the living room and no one says a word. It is silent. Because what do you say? We are just told we can't talk to our sisters, so we're certainly not bringing it up to them. They don't want to talk about it. Here we are talking about what at that time I thought was just my two oldest sisters. But I would learn decades later my stepfather had gotten to the twins. And then that was another
But they was 5 years old, right?
that oh man, the body blows, the emotional trauma of fear and anxiety, crisis is settling in on us, depression, isolation, all of it. You know, you're looking at the emotional and physical and the psychological damage that's being done. Because your parents, when you are a child, they are the most powerful people you know. It is not the president. It is not the policeman down on the corner. It's not your teacher. The most powerful people you know are your parents. And when they end up being the ones creating or committing the crime, and these are the people you would normally go to when something like this happens, you're in limbo. So you've got this eroding of trust. You are recalibrating everything you knew about your family. You're reshuffling the chairs on the Titanic as it's sinking. You're trying to get everything in place so you could save yourself. There's got to be a life raft somewhere. No, there was nothing. So there's emotional, this emotional regulating that you have to do just to get through the immediate aftermath, knowing more emotional and worse trauma is going to hit you in the hours and days coming up. So it was absolutely brutal.
How long do you and your sisters continue to live like that with your stepfather and mother
What
in the house?
what ended up happening was immediately after my mother and stepfather left, my oldest sister and my second sister, rather one of the twins, they left. But see, we were still under contract with United Artists Records, and we had to continue to perform. We had to pay back. So immediately, surely what happened after my mother got my stepfather out of the house was my oldest sister and the youngest twin, they left. But as I was saying, we're still under contract with United Artists. We still owe them a couple $100,000 for the production of the album. And so we have to keep singing. That's also because they're paying the rent on the house. We weren't making enough money to pay the rent on the house. And yet we're we're starting to develop all this fame. But fame does not always equate with riches. Fame just means you're popular, you're famous.
Mhm.
So we had to keep going. So those of us that were still around, we figured, okay, this is going to be difficult, but we have commitments. And so we decided let's keep going with that. But we got a lot to talk about. We have a lot to do. So he's gone. But dude, 2 weeks later, my mother brings him back because she says we need his income. He was working, he was making a little bit of money, and we needed everything that we could get. So the the trauma of trying to figure out what to do was heavy. Our sisters said they did not want us brothers to move out because they were young. And like, we don't want you to move out because if you move out, mom is going to let him loose on us. So We can't talk about it. Our little sisters are asking us to stay, which of course we do. We love our sisters, but we know that we can't do anything. Otherwise, we will lose the house and everything if we get into this big fight and stuff. So everyone's very aware of what's at stake, what we're talking about. Are we going to go back to, we had days with my older brother when we had to go into the streets to gather bottles, to turn into the store just to get enough money to buy a pound of ground beef or a bag of rice. We went through that. We would go to parks and get government cheese and government powdered milk and government powdered eggs. We were food stamp kings and queens. That's what our life was. And our sisters are like, we cannot go back to that. So because they asked us to stay and to keep going, that's the least we could do. We've got to protect them. But here we are. My mother has created a situation that we still have to deal with and won't deal with it. I remember when I came back, when I realized he was there, I had come in the house and it was quiet. And I heard footsteps upstairs, but they sounded like footsteps I hadn't heard for quite a while. And I was standing against the front door, back against the door, and I just listened. And I realized, oh, that's not my oldest brother's footsteps. I know the sound of those feet. They're heavy. It was thump, thump, slide, thump, thump, slide, because my stepfather walked with a slight limp. So he always dragged a foot behind him. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. And I shrunk down to 5-year-old me. The fear of what was happening shrunk me down to a little bitty boy. Someone starts to come down the stairs, and I see a foot, then I see another foot, and I knew what my mother had done. I'm against the wall, against the door, shocked, again, paralyzed, not knowing what to do. As I said, adults can't handle this information. How are kids supposed to handle it? And he stops at the bottom of the stairs, and he's 6'6", 250 pounds. He's a mountain of a man. And he wore this massive afro wig to put his height over 7 feet tall. I'm 5'8", 145 pounds. He outweighs me by over 100 pounds. He could break me like this. And he just stares down at me and starts laughing. He starts to walk toward me, and I slide over, and he goes out the front door, and he's just laughing. And my mother eventually comes downstairs, and like, what did you do? For 45 years, my mother just kept seeing him. When every time we thought we got rid of him, she'd secretly start seeing him. And each time she would see him, it's a betrayal of her children. So that's 1977. She told us, don't worry about it. I will handle it. I will get rid of him. And for me and my brothers, it's like, okay, you said you're going to handle it. You handle it. You said you're going to do it. You do it. You didn't want us to get involved with it because it could be very dangerous. She went 9 years. We went 9 years before something was actually done. Now, I'm an older brother and I am having difficulty. And I know this 9-year period is passing. And with each day, with each hour, with each moment, I'm feeling a loss of self-esteem, self-worth, because I'm feeling as though I'm betraying my sisters. And in my book, I'm incredibly vulnerable. I tell you everything I did and did not do, because you need to know my book is not a People magazine article. It's dark, it's gritty, it's ugly, but this is what happened. This is, once again, to use your title, the uncomfortable truth no one wants to talk about, especially in our neighborhood, in the Black neighborhood. No, absolutely not. We do not bring it up. The church won't bring it up. Schools won't bring it up. Social services won't bring it up. No, you just got to deal with it. So here's the uncomfortable truth. My mother saying that she would handle it, it was like a warm blanket. It meant I didn't have to do anything. You know, that's what it meant. But 3 months before I was to get married, 1986, I couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't. Because if I'm going to get married, that means the only person who could possibly do anything and would step up to do something, me, was going to be gone. I'm having these flashbacks. I'm having these imaginings of what he has been doing to them. I'm imagining that he is pulling them into a closet, closing the door. It's dark, but my sisters can hear the sound of a zipper going down. Hands, belt unbuckling, hands dropping to the floor. And then he is doing what he wants to do with them. I imagine while we boys are out in the streets playing basketball or football, he has them alone he is in my mother's bedroom because we boys are out of the way, and he is at my 5 and 6-year-old sister. I'm imagining this 3 months before my wedding. It is becoming so intense. I'm losing weight. I'm not eating. I don't want to do anything. And I'm getting angrier and angrier and just pissed because I depended on my mother, the one who just kept betraying us, to do something. So 3 months before my wedding, Lamore, what I did was this. I told my fiance, who I've been married to now for 38 years, that I had been living with her. And I told her, look, I got to go to the house this weekend. I got to handle something. I got to take care of something this weekend. Otherwise, it will never get taken care of. I got to do it. And she said to me, is everything okay? I'm like, well, yeah, it will be. Is there anything that I can do? Nope. I got to do this on my own. Will you be back tomorrow? I think so. What do you mean you think so? Well, yeah, of course I'll be back. Yeah, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'll be back, of course. I go out, hop in my little orange Fiat X19, drive to the house. Now, my mother still kept a bedroom for me. She kept a bedroom for all her kids because home is always home with your adults. No matter how old you are, you've always got a place. You always got a home here. Don't forget about it. You can lose your job. You can lose your rent. You can use your house. You always got a home here, baby. Don't worry about it.
You said you was living with your girlfriend, your fiance.
Right.
Who was still living in the house at the time that you was going there?
I had two brothers. And one of my two sisters, and my mother and she had brought him back because everyone is like, don't do anything. Mom's going to handle it. So that's who was at the house. And I'm like, no. I have got to step up and do what I'm supposed to do. And I'm getting into this very dark place. Because see, at this time, it has gone beyond emotional. It has now become mental. I am starting to become deranged. I'm starting to become someone's going to pay. There has to be revenge. Someone, and I know exactly who that someone is. This is the weekend it's going to happen. So I get to the house, and upstairs there are 2 bedrooms. There's my old bedroom and my mother's bedroom, which she had with my stepdad. We're about 30 feet apart. My bedroom is at the top of the stairs, just at the landing. You go to the landing, you make a left. There's my door right there. You go down the hall 30 feet, there's your door. Out in the hall, there's a short 3.5 foot wall that overlooks the stairwell. It's about a 15-foot drop. So I go into my bedroom and I'm in a very, very dark place. I'm a brother who's had enough. I'm a brother who is about to commit murder. I am about to kill him. While in the bedroom, I'm sweating profusely. I am so nervous and I'm thinking about he's so much bigger than me. I have to meet him in the hallway. And when I do, I cannot have my back to the short wall. Otherwise, he just needs to go push and I'm tumbling. Snap my neck at the bottom of the stairs. Done, I'm dead. I cannot be there. So I'm planning where I need to be. And then I start to think, as I said, he's so much bigger than me. Can I do this? Can I physically take him on? And then I remembered my little sisters, and I'm being triggered emotionally about what I believed he had been doing to them. Turns out one of my sisters read my book and she said, that's exactly what you described, the closet, pulling us into the bedroom. You're exactly right. That's exactly what he did to us. And you just imagine that's what was happening? I'm like, yeah, because I'm a brother. I could see that very clearly. She's like, damn, that's exactly what it was like and worse. So I'm thinking about this more. And at times I would lie on the bed and just take a deep breath. I'm sweating. The windows are open. Cool breeze is coming in, and I am drenched. And I sit up and I'm walking. I'm doing this for 2 hours, waiting to hear the sound of a door opening at the far end of the hall. 2 hours go by, and I hear it creak. And I'm on the bed, and I lift my head up. That's it. I sit up, swing my feet off the bed, put my feet on the floor, and I stand up. I walk to my door and I open it. Next to my door, against the door jamb, is my favorite baseball bat, the instrument of his death. I brought it with me. I hit many home runs at family picnics with that baseball bat. It was like it was made for my hands. I remember when I bought it, I went through so many bats, and then I landed on that bat. Oh, this is me. I love that bat. So that was going to be the instrument of his death. I peek out the door, and there he is, coming out. I step out, and I look down the hall, and he sees me. He's so big. He's so tall. He's so strong. But my sisters. So any chance for me to turn back, and believe me, I thought about turning back. All I needed to know was my little sister. I closed the door. He closed his door. We slowly start walking to each other, and he sees me, as I said, and he says, "Hey, how you?" And then he stopped because my face was not a happy face. It was, and he realized this was the moment because the comprehension just hit him upside the head so hard. It went from hey to oh shit, something's about to happen. And he had to have known something was going to happen at some point. He had to know. And I'm thinking, well, you knew this was coming. At some point, it was just a matter of when I was going to find the courage to do it. So we start walking toward each other, and we get to the middle of the hall. And I'm standing in the one place I'm not supposed to be standing. My back is to the short wall, and I realize it. I am one push away from tumbling over the wall, dropping down the stairwell, snapping my neck, and being killed. But here's the thing, I had already determined that my life was forfeit. I was already ready to give my life for my sister because to me, the trade off was I kill him and I go to jail for premeditated murder. California, the death penalty, I'm going to be put to death. Okay, but he's going to be dead out of my sister's lives for good. Or he's going to kill me. He's going to go to jail for murder out of my sister's life for good, and I'm dead. I was so okay with that. I was so okay with that because I'm a brother finally living up to what I'm supposed to be doing because I had no other place to go. This was my only recourse. This was my only option was to kill him. And it's crazy because if I kill him, my sister's lives become even worse because they're going to be, why did we tell him? We shouldn't have said anything. And their trauma is so much more impacted. And that's the trap for sisters. If they tell, what happens to their brothers? But you got to tell because otherwise, how do you start to recover? You can't constantly hold on to this. So we come together in the hallway. He's so much bigger than me. I cannot look over his shoulder. My face comes to his chest. That's how much larger he is to me. And I realize he's so much bigger than I ever imagined. Like I've known him for years, but he never seemed to be more bigger than he was in that moment. It was like shit, he had blocked out the sun. There's no light. There's no light in the hall. There's no light from anywhere. It is dark. That's how big he is. But I didn't care. My face is at his chest. And all I did was I look up and I said, you have 24 hours to leave this house. If you are still here by this time tomorrow, you will be dead because I will have killed you. I turned around, went back to my bedroom and closed the door. And he went back to his. And so that's the dark place brothers can get to if we're not allowed to do anything. I go back the next day and I'm waiting for a gun to be in my face, but it's not. The house is empty. He's gone. The trauma that brothers experience without any outlet only grows. It becomes darker and darker. And so the men that we grow to become is greatly impacted by the help we do or do not get. We've got to get help. And this is what I talk about. We have to get help.
In your book, you mentioned feeling like you failed your sisters. How have you come to terms with those feelings of guilt and failure?
My sisters have helped me through this in more ways than I ever could have imagined. My feeling was just this constant regret, this constant anger at myself for not doing what was necessary. To me, the definition of being a brother is protecting the honor of your sisters, and I did not do that. And yes, my sisters insisted that we don't do anything. They insisted we don't talk to them, but I'm traumatized. And I am in this place of uh, constant intrusive thoughts and imaginings of what happened to them. And so it's making me guilty. It is making me this sense of betrayal. The shame is overwhelming. The fear and anxiety because I know I need to talk to them and I'm so afraid to even mention it. So in 2013, as I started my journey, my 10-year journey to write helplessness, it took me 10 years. I went to a speak and write conference put on by the motivational speaker, Lisa Nichols. But before I went to learn how to write a book, which is what this conference was about, I called my second sister and we had never talked about what happened. And I told her, I need to talk to you about something. And it has to do with what happened. She said, okay, come on over to the house. Okay. So I get to her house and we're standing out in front of her garage. I'll never forget it. And I'm in tears because I know what I want to write about it. I know she's not going to be happy about it, but I have to do this. I have to let people know what brothers go through, what we experience. Every brother's experience is unique to them based on the relationship with their sister. And as I said earlier, we're constantly recalculating and recalibrating our relationship with our family around this stuff. And so the recalculation and the recalibrating is, no matter what I do, I will never be enough. But I called my sister to say, I said, look, I'm going to write a book about what happened to us from a brother's perspective. Because other men who have gone through this need to know they are not alone. They're not the only ones feeling what they're feeling. They need to know that you can get through this, but there are some steps you have to take. And so I'm waiting for my sister to just blow up, to just explode on me, to just say, hell no, how dare you, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what she did. What she did was she looked at me with as much grace as you could possibly imagine. She said, in such a loving way, of course you should write a book. All you boys should write a book. It's not my story. It's not a girl story. It's you boy's story. But you should write a book because it could help so many other brothers understand. I had no idea you were still carrying this trauma. I had no idea you were carrying this burden. We thought you guys just didn't care. And I'm like, no, you said we can't talk to you. So we honored that. And like that, things just started to melt away, just started to disappear. The fear, I had to cross through that threshold. I had to get past that. It's like the title of the book by Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. I figured my conversation with my stepfather was bad. But me talking to my sisters, oh, that was the real fear. That was the fear that even the thing with my stepfather couldn't even come close. As scary as that was, I have to go talk to my sisters because once again, it's the emotional trauma. The connection with them is what has me so afraid. So she said, you have to write the book. And I am crying on her shoulders. I'm like, how can you say that? You're supposed to be mad. And she says, no, no, I love my brothers. I understand. And so then I figure, okay, if I spoke to her, I have to speak to my oldest sister, the one who said you cannot talk about it. Because I need to let my sisters know what's coming. I'm not looking for permission. They just need to know what's coming so they can get emotionally prepared for when the book comes out, because people are going to ask. So I call my oldest sister and I say, I pick up the phone first and I set it down. I picked it up and I set it down for 30 minutes. I picked it up and set it down for what eventually took 2 days. I was so scared because she's the one who said, you can't ever talk about it. Don't you dare. Okay. Me and my brothers, all right, if you say so. I finally get her on the phone and I tell her the exact same thing I told my second sister. This is what I'm doing and why. But you also need to know, I believe our family did not come together for this great music experience. I believe our family actually came together to go through this so our story can be shared to save other little children. So that's what I believe. Because otherwise, why would I even be at this moment if it wasn't for everything that happened? I said, so our tragedy, our experience doesn't need to end in tragedy. It could be something that helps children, that helps brothers and sisters understand and help each other heal. It could help families understand they can live through us, explore and learn through our mistakes. And dude, there were so many mistakes along the way. We ended up having sex trafficking. There was a situation where I actually put my sisters back in front of him by trying to create a relationship with my mother later. Because I'm trying to heal the family, I figured, okay, how can I do this? And that is the greatest regret of my life. So I'm talking to my oldest sister, and she's quiet. I mean, if anyone's going to blow up on me, if the volcano is going to erupt, it's going to be her volcano. And so she's quiet for a couple of minutes. I'm thinking, oh shit, here it comes. And her response was, okay, all right, I'm okay with it. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're okay with it. What are you talking? What are you saying? You're supposed to be so mad at me. Why are you saying it's okay? Like, because I'm ready to move on. And I understand what you're talking about. If our story can help save some kids and save some families, I'm okay with it. And since you're talking about it from a brother's perspective, I think that's good. Turns out, the more after I'm done with the book, three of my sisters contribute. They share stories. Two of my brothers contribute. Now, I never would have thought in a million years that not only would they say you should write the book, but that they would contribute. Really? But that's because we got to a place where we could start talking, where we could understand each other's experiences. My sisters always thought their brothers didn't care. In fact, the sister who said, yeah, exactly what you wrote, the second twin, exactly what happened. She said, we just thought you boys didn't care. We just thought you boys were aloof about it. Because we're wondering how come you didn't do anything. And I have to remind them, I said, you told us not to. And they go, oh, yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah, we want to do something. We want to talk to you, but you said we can't. And yeah, there are millions of articles for women, and women control the narrative on this conversation around child sexual abuse and sexual abuse because historically what men have done to women over time. But 1 in 6 child sexual abuse victims are boys. And so boys just never get a chance to be part of the conversation, even when they're direct victims. It's you've got to do some searching. But if you're a brother, as I said, you are collateral damage, you're taboo, you're an inconvenient truth or uncomfortable truth. No one wants to address it because who wants to be responsible for how little boys grow up or how they don't grow up? So my sisters are like, yeah, write it. Definitely write it. It was shocking to me, but I accepted that I was a victim, which is step one. And then I knew I had to talk to someone. And even though I didn't speak to my brothers for 45 years, I decided I had to talk to my sisters and I was going to do it. I didn't care what happened. This conversation needs to be had if there's going to be any hope for our family coming back together and healing. And so that's what I did.
So there was a point where your sister stopped speaking to your mother?
That is a question. Two of my sisters stopped speaking to my mother forever. My two oldest did not, which I write about this. There's a chapter in the book about this, that my sisters still wanted to have some kind of relationship with my mother, which is kind of weird to me. And I write about it in the book because she's responsible for the trauma in your life. And yet you still want to talk to her. You still want to view her as this wonderful woman. And let's be very clear. We had some spectacular times as a family. There's no mistaking about that. In fact, one of the things that my mother did, she threw three big picnics for us every year: Fourth of July, Labor Day, and Memorial Day. We would invite 100 people. We would cook for everyone. We'd set up everything every year for 20 years. This is what we did, and so we were all constantly surrounded by family and friends in the midst of all of this. And I think what my mother was doing was trying to give us some happy memory. And that happy memory would be something that she could say, but no, I did this for you. I did that for you. And my sisters, they continue to talk to her. But that's what they've chosen to do. But I do write in the book, if that had been their brothers, if their brothers had gone back and created a relationship with our mother, without them doing so, we would have been raked through the fires. We would have been raked through the coals. How dare you go back to the person responsible for our trauma? But them going back and we're not able to talk to them made it okay for them. And it also gave my mother cover because that meant she still did not have to address it, which she hasn't, because at least two of her lambs came back to the fold. Two of her sheep came back. And so it meant she did not have to address anything because she at least had two out of the eight. So those two, to answer your question, did go back to her. Uh, my older brother eventually created a relationship with her, but that fell apart. So that's how that ended up and continues to be.
So she's still living.
Yes, yes, she is still living.
What
She
about
is still living.
the stepfather? Did you ever find out what happened to him later on? Or
Oh
the
yeah,
mother?
oh yeah, I found out.
What happened to
I
him? Did he
definitely
go to
found
jail
out.
eventually for doing it again?
In 2021, I'm still writing the book, and I know, Lamore, it has to finish one way. There's only one ending for helplessness. Now, helplessness is book one of a three-book series. There's
I
helplessness,
seen that.
there's hopefulness, and then there's happiness. I'm writing hopefulness now, which is how do you find hope in the middle of this, and how do you get to hope in the middle of all of this? So in 2021, many of my friends and colleagues and mentors would say, Keeper, you need to write this book. You need to finish this thing. You've been at this a long time. And I'm saying, no, no, no. It has to end one way. I know how helplessness is supposed to end. It has to be with me confronting him finally. So in 2020, December, I'm writing, and it occurs to me, let me go on Facebook and see if this fool has a Facebook page. Because all sexual predators have a Facebook page. Like, no, he's not going to have a page. Why would he do that? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. But I checked anyway. Damn, he had a Facebook page. I was like, what? He's got a Facebook page and he's communicating with people? You know, how brazen, you know, how much gall. You're supposed to be laying low. What? So I scan his profile and I go down and I see a message that says his wife passed away in December. This is a woman he married after my mother. She passed away in December. They're going to have a celebration of life for her in January, inviting family and friends to come, share stories, song, celebration of life, going home party. And I'm like, wow, where is this? Van Nuys. Van Nuys. Van Nuys is 15 minutes from me. Oh, dude, you just invited me. This is a public post. You invited the public. I'm part of the public.
Mhm.
I am going. You're going to see me that day. So I call my older brother in the morning and I say, dude, guess what? There's going to be a celebration of life for our stepfather's wife, and he's invited people to come. I'm going. He will deal with me that day. Are you coming? My older brother hesitated. I'm like, dude, stop. What are you talking about? We have to do this for our sisters. You're coming. So the day arrives and we go because he invited the world. This is amazing. We get to the church and we enter, and there's this long line of people waiting to go into the sanctuary. And at the front of the line, there's this guy, 6'6", 250 pounds, in all black. and he's wearing a pork pie hat. I'm like, oh, there he is. And he's leaning on a walker. And then your older brother said, there he is. He said, yeah. I said, dude, I don't care what condition he's in. He could be on a gurney. He can have oxygen and he can have 10 minutes left. He will see me today. I don't care. So we go in after everyone else has filed in, and he is on the side wall walking with his walker. My older brother and I are at the back of the church, and this church is a Protestant church. It's all white. Because I looked it up, I wanted to get see what the church is like, inside, and it's an all white congregation. The pastor is this big, jolly white guy, and it looks to be a very nice church. So we get there, it is a sea of black people. There are black people wall to wall, and the only white person that you could make out was the white pastor. So me and my older brother were at the back of the room. And we're just sitting and we're watching. We're seeing everyone mingle, reconnect, family and friends. And my stepfather is standing on the side, conversing with people with his walker. Turns out his older brother was there. When I was hearing apartment, park, liquor store from my mom, the apartment that was used was his older brother's apartment, and there he was too. The two of them, right there, together. And look at the older
The
brother.
brothers used to do it.
Look,
The brother used to do it too.
we don't know if he did it, but he allowed my stepfather to use his apartment
For it, I got you.
to molest and rape my sister. Now, what his brother did do, we later found out, was he had an affair with my mother while she was married to my stepdad. And the reason we know this is because my mother left pictures out of them in Vegas together in all manner of dress and undress. It's like you did what? It's like crazy. So everyone's mingling, and the pastor's walking around the church, and he's just all smiles and more. He is just, oh, look at all the energy. He's never seen so many black people in one place in his life, and they're in his church, and you can just imagine. Oh, the possibilities of my church growing if we get more black people to come. It was just, he was just over the moon. He was so happy. And he's walking around and just happy. And he stops in front of this one guy and he looks down at this guy who's sitting down and he says, isn't this amazing? Can you just feel the love in the room? Can you just feel the joy in the room? And I look up and I say to him, yeah, I can feel it all. Of all the people in the church that he would stop and talk to, and the only person he stopped and talked to was me.
The most maddest person there.
Not only that, I told my brother, I said, this is providence. His wife, who passed away, sent me here to protect her grandchildren. Because as long as he's been married to her, how many of his granddaughters sat in his line? How many of his granddaughters did he molest? How many of his granddaughters did he take advantage of? So she sent me here to protect them. Their service goes on for 90 minutes and we do not interrupt it. We let it go on. It's singing, it's stories, it's remembrances of how great she is. It's people actually sharing stories about what a great guy he is, what a great grandfather he's been to them. And me and my older brother were like, this is some bullshit. We've seen this story before. We've seen him pretend to do all this. This is what he did with us because we're entertainers. He's pretending, but he's also molesting. So the service is over. And we get in the receiving line because, as I said, he is going to see me. Retribution for my sisters is coming that day. I'm about to become the brother and the man they have always wanted. It is about to happen. His older brother sees me and my brother in line, and he stands up and tries to get his brother's attention. Now, his brother's at the front of the room, and he's sitting down in a metal folding chair, and he's receiving people. Line's about 30 people. And it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And the older brother's trying to wave to get his attention, and me and my brother see it, but he's not able to get his brother's attention. We just laugh. Nah, dude, you missed your shot. Too late. So we're 5 people away. My older brother's behind me. I'm 4 people away, 3 people away. Now, I had brought some ammunition with me. My sisters, when I told them what I was going to do, they were saying, "Oh, Lord, please do not put your hands on that man. Please do not." I said, "I'm not going to touch him. I have something better for him." 1 person away. My turn. I step in front of him. Now the roles are reversed from the hallway upstairs in 1986, where I was looking up at him. He is now sitting down. He is me. He is looking up at me. And his initial reaction was once again, "Hey." And then he stopped. The color drained from his face. His face became nothing but fear. And I'm just looking down at him. And he starts to shake. You can see him visibly shaking because why would I be? How could this possibly be? I lean down and I put my mouth next to his right ear and I whisper every expletive I can think of, every cuss word I can think of. MF, your day is over. Retribution has come. My sister's day of revenge is today. Your life will never be the same again. It is over. You are done, completely done. I stand back and I had a manila envelope with me, filled with 8 by 10 pictures. I pulled out the first one. It's my youngest twin at 5 years old. And it says at the top, the life and lives of him. It has 5 years old. You did this to her. And I drop it at his feet. Reach in the envelope, 5 years old. You did this. And I'm getting louder and louder as I talk. There's a church. People are laughing and joking. And now they're starting to hear my raised voice. Reach in, pull out another picture. Her, him, her. And I go all the way through it. I just drop them at his feet. You did this to him. And now the church is quiet. And they're hearing me talk about what he did to these 8 little children, particularly these 8 little girls, these 4 little girls. And I lean down again. It's over. It is over. Your life is done. The person before me in line was a therapist. She was standing off to the side with a friend of hers. This guy, I don't know. The pictures are still on the floor where me and my brother walked away. We started walking up the center aisle. And I stopped and I said, I got to go back and get my pictures. I'm not leaving those with him. When I turn around, the therapist had already picked up the pictures. And we could hear her tell the guy, "Here, get rid of these. Don't let anyone see these pictures. Put these away." I'm like, "You're a therapist. You just learned this guy has raped little girls for years. And your response is to get rid of the evidence?" I walk over to her and snatch my pictures away and say, "Give me my goddamn pictures. How dare you?" Now, at this time, I don't know she's a therapist. I will learn in a few minutes. Grab my pictures. I walk up the side, and then directly in front of me is this really big, muscular dude. He is massive, and he sees me talking to my stepfather, and I imagine he's waiting for me to touch him. I never touch him because I do not want muscles on my ass. Hell no. But that wasn't my point anyway. I wasn't going to do it anyway, but they're just watching. So we start walking up the side aisle, and we stop and talk to his brother and tell him what we know he did. Now, my older brother did not speak except twice. And as I'm in his brother's space, he's another 6'6" guy, saying, dude, why are you being so hostile? Why are you being so mean? It's me, it's me. I'm like, you're a piece of shit. And I'm just getting loud. And then he looks at my brother and says, call your brother off. You got to do something. And my brother finally says for the first time, nah, this is his show. I'm not getting in his way. That's the first time my brother spoke. As we start to leave the church, the woman that picked up the pictures comes up to us and says, gentlemen, 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 now is not the time and the place for this. This is not the time and the place. And it's quiet. Everyone is watching me and my brother. Over 100 people are watching us. We have taken over the church for 90 minutes, an hour and a half this went on. My brother then speaks again. The woman is saying, it's not the time and the place. He says, there's never a time and a place for this conversation. And then you could hear other people in the church just, no, they're right. There's never a time and a place. Nope, there is never a time and a place. And at this time, Muscle was directly in front of us, and he's just shaking his head. There's never a time and a place. I tell the church, I said, she is saying that there's never a time and a place. And I'm turning around, talking to everyone. And I said, she said there's never a time and a place. I said, that is not the right response for what has happened here. I said, there's a question. And there's only one question that each of you in this church should be asking. It's not is this the right time? The only question that matters is, did their stepfather get to my daughter? That's it. Did he molest and rape my children? That's the only question all of you should be asking right now. That's it. You need to talk to your children. We turned around and we walked out, got in our car, started driving away. As we're driving away, we hear a voice, hey. I look at my brother because our windows rolled down. I said, did you hear something? He said, yeah, I think so. We keep going. Hey, off in the distance. Stop the car. I'm driving. I look to my left, and there's this beautiful young black girl, about 6 foot tall, slinky. She's in this gossamer, bronze colored dress, shoulder to toe. I mean, she is gorgeous. She's running across the grass, and her feet are just sinking in the grass because it was watered that day. And she's struggling to get through, and she hits the sidewalk, clack, 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 clack. Hits the grass again, and then hits the asphalt on the street, clack, 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 clack. She runs up to us at the car and says, I need to talk to you. She whispers. No one's around but us, but she's whispering, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. The woman in the church whose service that was my grandmother. I need to talk to you. Okay. So I give her my cell number. I said, call anytime. Any of you can call anytime if there's anything we can do, anything, information we could help you with. We're here. She thanks us. She turns around and walks away. I look at my brother. He got to her, didn't he? My brother said, yeah. If he didn't, he got to one of her cousins or her sister, but he got to someone else in that church, and she knows, and she needs to tell somebody. Never heard from her because I think they shut her down, her family, because of the stigma. We cannot let this go beyond this church. We cannot talk about it. And that's just a continuation of this generational trauma. It becomes generational because if you are going to cover for this person, you become part of the protected detail. You are now have aligned yourself with a sexual predator. You have not aligned yourself with child victims who need your support. And so the elevating of the voices of children and the believing of children when they tell you something like this has happened should not be something that you just discard. You need to listen because children just don't make up this kind of stuff. Generally, how are you going to make up something like this detail? That's not a world that we come from. Those are worlds we experience. And so you've got to get beyond your feelings of your neighbors and families knowing and protect your children at all costs. So this is, as I said, a global epidemic for child sexual abuse, and it is an epidemic of the loss of families that brothers experience, the loss of sisters when we can't talk. We lose them and we become trapped in our head. The burden engulfs us. So we must be allowed to talk. And I invite any of your listeners and any of your viewers to those who have experienced something like this. I understand the trauma behind it. I understand deeply what you are going through. But the thing that you can do best of all is to stand in your space, own your space, accept the fact that you are a victim and now go to survivor mode and speak up. And then you can begin to thrive with your life because the shackles begin to fall away simply because you are talking about it. You have to find at least one person who you can talk to, who you can trust, who will allow you to just talk. That's step one to your healing, is being allowed to talk without any judgment. And if you're listening to someone tell the story, don't say anything, just listen. As we began to go through our experiences, what my sisters heard, what my brothers heard was, girl, I would have done this. Dude, I would have done that. That's noise to us victims. That's nonsense because you don't know what you would have done unless you're in it. And it's not an experience you want to repeat. So you can't say, girl, I would have done this. Don't do that. You try to normalize their experience. You try to discard their trauma and their pain. They just need to talk. So if you're listening, and if sisters, if you're listening to your brothers, just let them talk. When I finally spoke to my sisters, I said, look, just give me everything. Say everything you need to say. I will not interrupt. That did so much for them to just let me be bombarded with their anger. But it also did a lot for me because it meant I had the strength and the courage to deal with whatever I needed to deal with. The next thing you have to do is understand that this is not going to go away. It's going to be part of you. It gets into the marrow of your being. It's your essence now, and it will drive every decision that you make going forward, whether you know it or not. It's like DNA. And like DNA, the trauma is self-replicating. And like DNA, it can self-replicate in ways, it manifests in ways you have absolutely no idea until it's too late. Mine replicated and manifested into me almost committing murder because I couldn't handle it. There was no support system. There were no tools for me. And I'm like ready to kill. So you've got to understand it's part of your DNA and accept it. Then the next thing you have to do, as I said, the first three steps is then find someone to talk to. There are There's counseling out there. There's family counseling. There's individual counseling. One of the things you may have a challenge with, as I did, I spoke to multiple counselors about what happened and what I was going through. And because no one has ever talked about this from a brother's perspective until my book, every counselor to a person said, I don't know how to handle this from a brother's perspective. I don't know what to tell. I don't know how to help you because I've never heard of anything like this. We weren't trained on how to help brothers. If it was your sisters, yeah, we could do that because they're women, and we have so much background with women being sexually abused and girls being sexually abused. Even if you were the guy who was directly sexually abused, we could help you there. But collateral damage, a brother with the challenges because they're so unique to brothers, we don't know what to do. So every counselor that I went to said, I can't do anything for you. You got to figure it out on your own. And the tools must be created, systems. You have 12-step programs for everything, but you don't even have a one-step program for a brother. How is that even possible?
Makes
And so
sense.
that's
Weirdness,
what
yes.
I look to do is create those conversations that will help create those programs and tools. Um, that's what I do.
You mentioned that you did counseling. You also very outspoken. You wrote a book. You got a podcast. You interview people. Did your siblings ever do counseling, anything like that? Support.
No, no,
They,
no.
they just live with them.
I would say this. I sought counseling, but every counselor that I went to said they couldn't help me. Even today, even today. A couple of years ago, I went to some more, and they said I can't help you. So I sought counseling. They couldn't help me because they didn't know what to do with a brother's problem. Imagine that. Uh, it's kind of crazy because what I tell them, I said, if me and my family were in an auto accident and all nine of them were killed, and I'm the surviving brother or son, could you help me? Yeah, I can help you with
Yes.
that. Then this is the same thing. My family has been lost to me. They, in a way, have been killed. How can you not help me with that trauma? Well, you're not an auto accident victim. This is really it is nuts. It is absolute nuts.
But a therapist should understand that that this is trauma and PTSD that comes with that too, because
Dude,
you can blame yourself. You wonder, when did it happen? Was I in the house at the time? Uh, if it happened when I went to the bathroom, what's going on?
yeah,
So you always thinking about, like you said, you was thinking about it so much, it made you furious.
dude,
It made you want to confront.
songs, songs that we used to sing, they come in my head and I just imagine how much fun we had. Then I go to boom, what happened? All these things trigger victims, trauma victims. It could be a song, it could be a book, it could be a commercial, it could be a movie, it could be, just at a family gathering, you hear something and like, oh, and you are so correct. They have to treat us as though we are trauma victims, but they keep saying you're a brother. I don't know what to do with brothers. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I was dating a woman once, and she was in word, but she never told me who did it. She just told me she was the N word, and she could never watch anything with child abuse in it. So no matter if it was a movie, she found out, turn it off. A podcast, turn it off. An article, turn it off. She never wanted to see anything of that nature on it. And she liked a podcaster, true crime podcaster named Belly Sarian. But every time her true crime came up with a child, turn it off. She always turned it to the next one. So they
And
do
I'd be with my wife and kids and we're watching something. It's something. It doesn't have to even be the subject, but something could happen. It could be a father with a daughter on a TV show or something, and they're just being father and daughter. They're just having a good time, and I just start crying. I just can't help it. I'll see sisters with little brothers, and I'm just overwhelmed. Even after I have done everything that I have done, because even when I was done with my stepfather, done with him at the church, I called my sisters and I said, I did it. I brought you a small degree of closure. I I am trying to give you some retribution, some revenge, some ability to know that someone actually did the thing for you, that I stepped up and I handled it. Even if 40 years later, I would not let it go. And they're just crying because I made, in their eyes, I made the situation so important that it mattered to me that much that even 40 years later, I tracked him down for them. And it just made us close. I have great relationships with three of my sisters. We're texting all the time. We're on the phone all the time. We're sharing pictures all the time. And it's because for all of my failures, for all of my woulda, coulda, shoulda moments, I I found I found the necessary courage to do that for them because I just would not let it go. And it just brought us together. It really, really did. And people are afraid of those conversations, but you have got to have those conversations. It ranks up there. Never talk about politics at Thanksgiving, never talk about religion at Thanksgiving, never talk about who's having an affair, and never, especially, do not talk about who was sexually abused. You may get away with the first three, politics, religion, and who's having an affair, but you better not talk about who was sexually abused as a kid.
I got a cousin. My aunt is married to their brother, basically, right? But I'm not blood
Mm-hmm.
related to him. So he had an uncle, and for years he was all worrying and worrying his grandchildren and probably his stepchildren too. And it took years. Now everybody's adults now, and it came out. And as soon as it came out, they disowned him. The whole family kicked him out the house. But he had a lawsuit where a scalpel got stuck in his head because he did angel dust. So he was and through surgery, the scalpel got left in his head, so he had to go back under, and they gave him millions of dollars. So now he's a millionaire. It's owned from his family. But my cousin kept speaking to him, and so did his other nephews, or at least other nephews by marriage, because he was married to their aunt. So so he remember I told this guy got money now. He told his nephew, my cousin, that he can't get a woman, so he gonna become gay. And my cousin like, what you mean this and that? He's like, no one will touch me. Like I can't get a woman, so I'm gonna try my luck with a man. And soon after that, he died. I told that
Mm,
story to show you that I may not have a direct relation, but I do know people, and I do got family members I did grow up with that experienced that. So it's a cousin that it's like what a cousin feel, not a brother, but it's what a cousin feel. It's what a
hmm
sister feel. I think all my aunt, all his aunt kids was girls. I don't think they had no boys. I think she had
mm.
about four girls, and even her daughters got nothing but girls. I think.
My older brother has a saying that I think, from a from a man's perspective, I think it's a very good saying. And every man should just assume at this point in our history, you should just assume that every woman you have ever met, every woman that's involved in your life, just assume that they have had some sort of sexual abuse. Someone has said something to them inappropriate. Someone has done something to them inappropriate. Just assume that position with every woman and then go from there. Because if you go from there, you have a better understanding of what they may have gone through. You have a better understanding of what their life is like as a woman in today's society. You have a better understanding of how you, as a man, should approach them and not be so uh, 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 just unaware. We all, in my opinion, have this feminine male dynamic about us. We're all part of that. Men just, as I said earlier, just have this abundance of testosterone, so our energy
That
is
masses
typically
it.
more, yeah, more male driven. Women with the estrogen, but if we do not have the feminine dynamic, chances are we don't cry when we need to cry. We don't feel empathy when we need to feel empathy. We aren't able to be as a compassionate. Women are much better at that than men. Men need to learn what that is like. And we're starting to get there. We're starting to have these conversations. We're starting to express our vulnerability because our celebrities are starting to talk more and more about it. So that will be incredibly helpful. But just assume, and I do, with every woman that I meet, they have experienced something. I assume even my nieces, even though I don't know anything to the contrary, I just assume they have heard something, someone has said something to them at the very least. And I operate from there. And I think that's the best thing, the best place that a man can do when they are meeting a woman or a girl. Just assume it, and your understanding of what their world is on much better footing.
Okay, before we close, I want to talk about this article. So in New York, there was a man. He raped a girl, tied her hands and her friend hands. They was playing soccer outside the school, and took him to the grass, and he all worked the girl, and then told them to stay there for I think like 15 minutes, don't move, and once like the time left, they ran off to the school and told. So they put out a sketch, they put out the tattoo. Once they put out the tattoo, some people already knew who he was, and then they put out a video of him riding a bike. So people in the neighborhood of Queens knew exactly who he was. He was a migrant, and so they beat him up, stripped him, and cops apprehended him. So it's an article that was posted June 20th, and it says Democrats suggest coverage of illegal migrant charged with raping New York City teen is fear mongering. Representative Pamela J. Powell, D. Wash, and MSNBC host Joy Reid on Tuesday claimed recent coverage of an Ecuadorian illegal migrant arrested for the alleged rape of a 13-year-old girl was fear mongering. What is your thoughts on that?
Not having watched the segment with Joy Reid, who I watch quite a bit, and I know Congresswoman Jayapal, that does sound, from what I know about them, usually not the position they take on this. They normally don't call that fear mongering. In fact, they are of the belief that typically the person that should be dealt with. With that said, is that fear mongering because the community is insisting on exposing this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The community and the victims are owed, at the very least, that the story be told, because the community needs to be protected from that individual. I don't care if it is a migrant. I don't care if it's an immigrant. I don't care if it's someone whose family has been here for 400 years. That part is irrelevant. What's relevant to me is that person raped this girl, and that person needs to be dealt with. They need to be held accountable, because this is what happens. Statistically speaking, Lamore, statistically speaking, a sexual predator of children will strike on average 170 times before they stop. Now, they may repeat the act with the same child over and over and over again, those are considered individual, each one. But they will sexually abuse, on average, 170 times. That is not fear mongering to hear that. So if this migrant, whoever this person is, if, like I said, whether they're migrant or not is irrelevant. What's relevant is that this person, it's not just sexual abuse, it's physical abuse. Because as you said in your description of what you read, they tied the person up.
The boy had to watch them.
Yeah, and the abuse for the boy who had to watch it, it is the traumatizing of that for both of them. I, my stepfather could do some horrible things. And this is just talking about having to watch. One day, my oldest sister had gotten into trouble. I forget what happened. And he and my mother were really upset with what she did. And what he did to her was unlike something I had ever seen in my life as a little kid. He tied her down to an ottoman. All four, both arms and both legs, are tied down to this ottoman, this little chair. My mother, instead of stopping it, went upstairs because she didn't want to see it. But we kids, her brothers and sisters, were forced to watch him take off his belt, raise her dress, and beat her. The memory of that is seared in my brain. It's as though it happened yesterday. Now, he had already been sexually abusing her. This wasn't one of those, but you put the two together, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse. What the girl had to experience being tied down, it just reminds me of my sister. I immediately went there. It's her being hog-tied like a cow, like a baby calf to be branded, and she's abused, and the boy has to watch. And so, as I said earlier, you do not get rid of this stuff. It is a part of your DNA. It is a part of your essence. What do you do with yourself after? How do you move through life after is the question. So for those two young people, how do you come back from that?
Exactly.
How do you come back? Hopefully, with your story, they're able to get to a place where they can use their experience to help. But that story needs to be told. It cannot be hidden. It's like our story was hidden for decades. And that is not fear mongering. Not even, no.
They may never want to go outside again, or
Exactly.
they won't play soccer. They never want to play soccer again. They may not want to go to school ever again. See that yard, and like, oh, that's where they dragged me off to. So
yeah.
Or
they don't want to be around their friends and other people because of that stigma. Oh, they know what happened to me. Oh, no. Their only thing that can be offered for them is the telling of their story, so that person can be dealt with properly and never see the light of day again.
He just got arraigned. Let me see, can I pull it up? Did you hear about the father?
No.
58-year-old Ahmed Ali, an Uber driver accused of a heinous crime.
Where they're asking that the court find probable cause for rape in the second degree and kidnapping in the first degree.
The victim relying on Ali's service as a rideshare driver to get back safely. Instead, documents say, Ali used his Uber app to make it seem like he dropped the victim off. Then, drove here to this secluded location outside of Olympia and raped the victim.
She is fearful if he is released, or expressed that she would be fearful if he is released.
The probable cause documents say the family of the victim got worried when the woman did not return home. The father, using his phone, tracked his daughter's location to the scene of the assault and found the victim naked in the back seat of Ali's car, with Ali scrambling back to the front seat, trying to pull his pants up.
There is a substantial danger that the defendant will commit a new violent crime, and this is based on the nature of these allegations.
Documents say the victim's family beat up Ali, and at least 2 shots were fired. Investigators say Ali tried to flee the scene, despite medics saying he needed help. In court, Ali still had bandages on his hands. Near the scene of the attack, I spoke to a dad who told me it's horrifying to hear what happened to someone else's daughter on Father's Day weekend.
You know, to me, it's justice, and it should have never happened to begin with, right? That it's just disgusting, but I'm glad the dad was able to be there.
The suspect is a father himself of 5 children. The courtroom was packed with family and neighbors in support of Ali. Investigators say Ali's daughter actually reported her father missing to police on the day he's accused of raping someone else's.
He found a guy assaulting his daughter in the car, so he shot him. This was June 18th. This happened in Washington, Thurston County, Washington.
That was almost me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was me about to commit murder.
Mm-hmm.
And the father, the trauma is so bad. He's almost forced to have to do something, you know, to honor his daughter, to show the family, I care, and I'm willing to do I'm willing to do what's necessary, even give up my life for her. And so now the daughter is no doubt going to lose the husband, because that person is going to jail for murder.
Mm-hmm.
And the trauma becomes even greater, and it continues to grow, and it becomes that generational reaction, that generational need for support. And the father's in a depressed state, and he's in isolation. He's in his head because the emotional trauma is so great, it has moved to mental. I have to do this on my own. And it is so sad. It's so sad. But I was 24 hours away from doing that.
Says the official said the driver was taken into the hospital, was injuries, and was arrested and charged of second-degree rape and first-degree kidnapping.
You know, well, that may come later.
Yes,
because that's taking the law into his own hands. So that may come later. We may read about that one later.
Yeah, and I want to get into the thing. So it was offered $10,000 for that case, the first case I told you about with the migrant, Ecuadorian migrant. So it was giving away $10,000, and nobody claimed it. And they saying they're not claiming it because remember I told you they beat them up. So
yeah,
they claim the money, they might get charged with assault and probably kidnapping too, because they tied them up and put them inside the trunk. Oh,
so at this point they have no suspect.
Yeah, so I think their best bet is not to claim that money. If you could be anybody in the world, past, present, or future, for 1 year, and come back with their knowledge, who would it be?
Oh, wow. And come back with their knowledge. I think based on the arc of their life and their experience and their evolution, I think I would like to come back with the knowledge of Malcolm X. To see the growth and understanding that he experienced through his life, with all the trauma and all the danger, but the growth of the man is something to behold. And so I would love to come back with his knowledge his experience. Would I do things the way that he did? It's generally not my nature, but I would love to have his knowledge and his eloquence in speaking, his ability to speak, his ability to examine a situation and express it. So incredibly intelligent and just a very passionate person about what he believed. And as I said, he evolved in many ways. There was such an evolution. So that's who I'd love to come back with his knowledge.
I would like to be. I always pick somebody different, and this time I'm gonna pick George Washington because I want to see what was really going on when they were signing these documents and creating these agendas that's still going on to this day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would bring that the knowledge I would take from that, I would bring back with me, and I would use it to gain riches, fame, and also try to put a fork in their plans if I can.
hmm Yeah, I think part of the challenge that we deal with, as you said, is learning what the mindset was and what they were going through back then, and how it is constantly trying to be applied to today because it serves a certain group's agenda. And you cannot compare what was going on in the world, let alone the country, uh, back then to where we are right now. And yet there's this constant going back to the founding fathers, what they said. Well, the founding fathers didn't have cell phones. The founding fathers didn't have this technology. The founding fathers didn't have much of anything that exists today. So those ideas and stuff don't always apply. From a standpoint of were they meant to do good, or they meant to serve the greater good? Okay, I'm okay with that, but look at what we had to go through. Indeed, from just going through the slavery and all this. Are you saying that we're supposed to still be dealing with that mindset today? I don't think so. No, that can't apply. But there is the historical, as you're saying, the historical relevance of it that can be used today to not only help, but as you said, could put you in a position to gain knowledge and riches. Sure.
Yes.
And change the entire conversation today.
Yes, because the British ruled the land at that time.
Yes, they did.
So slavery was dumb, but after the British left, slavery continued. So
Yeah.
That's also that's why I said that. And also, have you ever heard of the Black Founding Fathers?
No.
Here's the Battle of Bunker Hill. Bunch of white guys, right? Unless you know where to look. Right here. That's Peter Salem. He was actually the hero of the battle. It doesn't look like he's a hero there. He looks like he's cowering behind the white guy with a sword. He was the hero of the battle. And he saved scores of American lives that day.
There's a video of a Fox anchor made this years old. He made it, and he got fired once he made the thing. But it's still on the internet to this day. I'm gonna send that to you.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to read it.
All right.
And anything that you want to send me, be it a video or an article, yeah, please pass it on.
I would definitely. All right. You got any last words?
It was an honor to be here. You allowed me the time and the space to express and share ideas and concepts that aren't universally considered when it comes to brothers. And coming on your podcast allows me to further bring up the subject and hopefully get people talking about something that they had never talked before. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your knowledge. And I'd love to come back. I would love to have even more conversation about any number of things. So if I could be of service, do not hesitate. So thank you for having me.
I would like that. I wish my co-host was here. I think she would have been very good at answering you questions about their life, your situation, I wish she was here.
That would have been really interesting to have a woman in the middle of this conversation.
That's exactly.
That would have been great.
So,
So, if you ever want to do that, just reach out.
that's like I said, I also appreciate you for coming on. Like, your story was very informational. This video was the longest video I did in a while. It's also probably be the easiest video to edit because like the way it went was perfect. So I probably won't have to take too much out of it. Thank you for watching Uncomfortable Truth Podcast. My special guest, Keeper Catran-Whitney. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.